I always recall at the time there was a fair number of ways that you would find out that you actually were conscripted. Because I was fairly apathetic about it, I guess I never really even thought that this would probably happen. And indeed, it was one of the guys at work that came around and said to me, "Weren't you born on the 14th of June?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You're gone."
This barrel held the immediate future for 40,300 young Australians who've registered for national service since January the 25th. It will continue to hold the immediate future for all young Australians who reach the age of 20, while the government continues its present policy of national service training by ballot.
There was a very different philosophy about when you actually got into training and being conscripted to when you were, I guess, a civilian, for want of a better word. Yeah, you were probably more apprehensive of the war. Suddenly it was starting to get a bit real. You were getting slapped around the face about, oh, hang on, we could be going here. When my conscription came through, I was actually quite, probably had 2 points of view on it. The first one was, yeah, hang on, this is interrupting. In those days I was playing a lot of football and it's interrupting my football career. Any potential I had there was obviously going to suffer a major dislocation. So I was a bit upset about that, but at the same time, I was working in the public service. It was pretty boring at the time, so this was probably a little bit of excitement. It was fairly serious because you had a 12-week training program, which was the basic training, and then the idea was you then went on and did another 12 weeks of core training, which was specific to the particular arm of the army that you'd been allocated to. Training sessions went from, as I say, probably started about 8:30 in the morning, and you would go through until varying times of the night, but it was generally somewhere you wouldn't finish before 7:30, and some nights it'd be 10 o'clock before you actually finished. No weekends for the first 4 weeks, no leave. You just trained consistently 24/7 for that 4 weeks. They had a Vietnamese village mocked up in the actual army grounds there, and we were expected to patrol through that. There were some of the NCOs were actually hiding in pits under the bunks, which none of us had thought to search for, and they were able to pull a gun out, load it, and all of a sudden we were under fire. It was all blanks, but yeah, it was a come to Jesus moment that you realised, hey, this is getting serious and we aren't as smart as we thought we were. One of the other things we had to train on was grenades. 2 days before us, one of the recruits in one of the other companies at the training battalion actually had malfunctioned when he was in there, pulled the pin out of the grenade and froze. And unfortunately, the NCO that was with him wasn't able to react quickly enough, and both of them were killed in the process when the grenade went off inside the pillbox. That was very, very clear in our memory because it only happened a couple of days before. It made it even clearer still and focused your mind a lot more when you got in there and realised you were in the bunker that actually where it occurred, because there were still bloodstains on the wall and whatnot from the explosion a couple of days earlier. Yeah, that was testing. When we were given our first leave, we were able to go home and we were allowed to bring back our vehicles, but we were also instructed to leave all of our civilian gear at home, so that effectively we only had army clothing to work in. It did make you stand out a fair bit in terms of local community. They spotted straight away that you were a grunt coming down the street because of the uniform. Unfortunately at the time, a lot of the public, because of the anti-war sentiment, were actually becoming not quite aggressive but getting borderline on it, and it got to the point where we were actually getting spat at and spat on. So to be publicly vilified for being exactly in that position was really very strange and, yes, definitely very hurtful, because in all of these cases, we didn't ask to be there. We were at a stage where We were just starting to get really, really ready and prepared for this upcoming battle. Subsequently, the news comes through that it's all over, Red Rover, it's not going to happen. There was a change of government in Canberra, and Gough Whitlam and his cronies from Labor got in after a very, very long period of Liberal government in Australia. One of the first things his cabinet did were to basically sign the papers to stop Australia's involvement in Vietnam in terms of conscription. So you've got 1,200 super fit guys sitting there with nothing to do. And then, of course, the biggest thing you had to look forward to each day was the wet canteen opening of the night. Well, of course, everyone would go up there because nothing else to do, get smashed on booze. Then the fight started all over the camp at different times as a result of people getting on the booze and taking umbrage with someone else. It was really just bored, fit people not coping with it. The initial stages of coming to grips with the fact that we had been discharged was probably, at the time, your initial feeling is, Beattie, I've missed out. You find though, as the years roll by, there's probably a couple other thoughts really do come into the process. It was certainly something I don't regret doing. Yeah, there were aspects of it in terms of not actually going over there after preparing for the Vietnam conflict. That did grate. I guess there's even a little bit of survivor guilt in there, the fact that other guys had to go and you didn't. So, you know, effectively you let the side down a bit. I never had an anti-war approach. I probably do now. They don't win anything for anybody apart from usually the countries who perpetrate the wars. It's certainly not the people that actually go and fight them.